Shine the pulse of the road and the future of flight. From viral trends to policy shifts, we cut through the traffic to bring you the stories that drive us. Your fast-track guide to everything on the move starts right now. From the Billionaire News Channel studio to Mel 947 BFM, I'm Paolo del Rosario. This is Shift Happens. Mobility and transportation. Now, when we talk about those things, we often focus so much, at least right now, on electric vehicles, smart apps, and even new roads and infrastructure. But there is a vast, passionate community that finds meaning not in where we are going, but where we came from. Now, classic cars aren't just old machines collecting dust. They are rolling pieces of history, art, and culture. And for Filipinos both at home and abroad, the love for vintage automobiles is becoming a powerful vehicle for community, nostalgia, and global connection. What started over a decade ago as a simple way to connect Filipino classic car owners in Southern California has exploded into a global movement. From the streets of Los Angeles to highways across the Philippines, the appreciation for rare, restored automobiles are bridging generations. It's an industry built on passion, patience, and craftsmanship, and a commitment to preserving automotive history and heritage in an increasingly disposable world. But restoring these vehicles goes beyond just a hobby. It's a lifestyle that empowers local mechanics, preserves historical narratives, and promotes a unique culture of automotive discipline and appreciation. It is a steady engine of community that keeps these vintage beauties running, and today, the Filipino classic car scene proves that no matter how far technology shifts us forward, our soul remains firmly rooted in the classics. Now, to help us understand the recognition, restoration, and rising global influence of the Filipino classic car community, we are joined today by the founder of Lumang Oto, Dr. Ericson Salmo, who is a lifelong restorer and also a physician and medical director. Doc, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Doc, you're coming at us from LA right now, and Lumang Oto is a community that you started back in 2014. Can you give us a quick background on paano ito nagsimula?
Okay. Lumang Oto started as a Facebook page that began in 2014 with the intent to create a network among old car owners and enthusiasts within Los Angeles area where I live. So one time I was doing some cruise with one of my other friends. I love American cars. I drive a 1968 Mercury Monterey, and I have a friend who drives a 1973 Pontiac Firebird. And we were doing some cruise during a New Year's Eve, and I was telling my friend that, hey, how come there's not a lot of Filipinos that are involved in the old car culture? And lo and behold, there was another Filipino that just stopped in front of us driving another American muscle, 1968 Oldsmobile 442, and he said hi to us. He said, "Kabayan, kamusta?" And then all of a sudden, a light bulb kind of went off in my head. I was like, what if I start a Facebook page with an intent to just create, a network within the community where we could announce car meets and those kind of stuff, anything related to the car culture in general. And so I started Lumang Oto. Initially, the name of Lumang Oto was Phil Classic Car Junkies. And then later on, I kind of changed it. I wanted it to be a little bit playful and catchy. So I thought of renaming it to Lumang Oto, and I intentionally spelled it phonetically as OTO. I think that's where it started growing. Maybe the name is kind of catchy.
Yeah.
And then I started writing blogs about the old car, and probably people started sharing them, and before I know it, people started sending me photos of their cars. Hey, can you feature my car? Can you feature my dad's car? And then it kind of started getting bigger, from 15 followers, all of a sudden, again, I never intended it to become big. All of a sudden, I have 1,000 followers, 2,000, 3,000, and now we have the last time I checked, a little over 190,000 followers all over the world. We have followers from, of course, the US and Canada, Middle East, Europe, Australia. But more importantly, if you look at the demographics, 90% of our followers are from the Philippines, which is really awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. 190,000 followers since starting on 2014, and it felt like it came out of nowhere. Were you surprised that there was this type of community that was existing, that was a bit untapped siguro when it comes to this particular lifestyle?
Well, yes and no, right? Because I've been into the car hobby since I was young. And, the nostalgia of, wanting to stay in that era, when you were young, it's in the hearts of many people. So I think, in a way, I'm surprised because I never expected it to explode that way, to become as big as what it is today. Because, the intent is just to start a small community, right? A closely knitted community within Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So now it became international. So I was really surprised that it became big.
Yeah, I just want to go back to how this started for you because obviously the hobby was there for sure. When did this hobby start? Because it's one thing to appreciate the classic cars, another thing to own it, restore, and of course have that entire investment in it because it isn't necessarily cheap. Paano ito nagsimula para sa'yo in the sense that classic cars have become that hobby that would, I'm sure, takes up a lot of your spare time?
My goodness. So I don't even know where to start. Kasi ever since I was young, I was collecting matchboxes and Hot Wheels, Siguro that is what triggered my passion towards cars in general. Later on, it kind of shifted towards older cars because when I look at newer cars, no offense meant for new cars, it's very important. I drive a new car as well.
Yeah.
Because we need reliable daily drivers, right? But for me, a new car is sort of like it's an appliance that transports you from point A to point B, right? And I don't know, for me, it all looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started gravitating towards old cars, right? Muscle cars. Initially, that's where my passion was. And then I kind of transitioned to different kind of cars as well. I collect all sorts of cars, old JDM cars, European cars, old Mercedes, those kind of stuff. So that's how it all started. It all started with the passion for cars in general, and then it just transitioned towards the older cars.
Yeah, not to disparage any of the new cars that are coming out now, any of the new models, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it does feel like yung mga classic cars, regardless of the make, it could be European, it could be American, it could even be Japanese, there's a bit more soul in the way that they are constructed, in the way that they do run. Is that something that you feel siguro is lacking in the modern cars today?
Precisely, old cars do have soul when we compare it with newer cars. And I think on top of that, the challenge of owning one, right? The challenge of trying to look for parts. Parts could be very expensive sometimes. Parts could be almost impossible to find sometimes. Those kind of things. But when you drive them, they're so visceral. There's no driver aids in the car. It's just you and the machine. That kind of feeling when you drive an old car. And of course, on top of that, I guess it's the owners that make it special as well. In the old car community, I should say there's no ego. Mababaw lang po yung kaligayahan namin. We're looking for an old part that we couldn't find for a long time, and then we kind of find it in eBay or we find one in a local junkyard. Those kind of things, Tatawag na kami sa mga friends namin, I finally found the parts that I've always been looking for. Those passion.
Yeah.
And what makes me so excited too, especially in Lumang Oto, is when somebody would send me, photos of an old vehicle that they restored that nobody expected that, those kind of vehicles would be restored. Few years back, somebody sent me a Harabas. I mean, who would restore a Harabas? Because even back in the day, nobody wanted those cars, right?
Yeah.
But now, fast forward 2026, there are people that are so passionate with the hobby that they would restore a Harabas. Few months back, somebody sent me a Vauxhall Victor. I think that was early 70s or late 60s, if I remember it right. He's from Iloilo. And, that kind of excites me because even when I was young, those cars were just old, dilapidated cars. And now it's 2026. Somebody would actually take time to restore those kind of cars. So I think that's what makes the old car hobby kind of different from the newer ones. And again, no offense meant, I love new cars as well. But that's probably the big difference, the passion, the nostalgia when it comes to older cars.
Yeah, absolutely, Doc. I actually would argue also the effort required to actually maintain, the effort to actually look for a way to find a certain part. Because apart from keeping an old car, it's the constant restoration, siguro, that's hard when they are looking for parts that are no longer being manufactured right now. How big is that in terms of the whole journey of owning a classic car? The maintenance and, of course, the effort required to make sure that it still runs almost like it did back in the day during its prime, or maybe even better now.
Well, that's a big part of it, of course, when you own an old car, because you have to maintain that, right? The cool thing about this is, it makes it easier because everything is now online. I restored the 1972 Toyota Corolla, right?
Wow.
Back in the day, I think the default, when I was still back in the Philippines, I would go to Banaue, and I don't know if Banaue still exists today. I hope it still does.
It does, yeah.
And I would go there. Oh, that's good. That's good to know. So, it's a hit and miss kind of thing back in the day if you're trying to look for old parts. But right now, I think with the network, because of the internet, it makes it a lot easier. Of course, relatively speaking, when you compare it to newer cars, old cars is still more difficult to restore. But at least the internet makes it easier. I could buy parts from all over the world this time. I bought parts from Thailand, for example, for my Corolla, which you couldn't do back in the day. I mean, you could, but you probably spend a fortune for doing that. But right now, it makes it easier because of the online community and social media as well. People know someone who has this part. They could just refer them to this person and that. So the networking makes it easier. But relatively speaking, it's still kind of difficult, especially if you're restoring a car that is kind of unusual. For instance, I have a '68 Mercury Monterey. That's a very unusual car.
Yeah.
Here in the States, the mainstream cars are Mustangs, Camaros, or Chevelles. In the Philippines, probably a box type Lancer, a Corolla. Those are the mainstream cars, right? But if you're trying to restore a Vauxhall or restore an old Ford Cortina, that's a different story, right? Parts are very scarce. For me, it took 2 years to restore my Mercury. I was just scavenging for parts on eBay every single day. And then it took 2 years before I was able to finally complete the car, which is, I think, there's the fun factor as well when it comes to looking for parts and finding it.
Yeah, Doc, I can't wait to talk to you a bit more about that. And of course, we're going to take a quick break for the meantime because I want to talk more about what it takes to restore a car, the people around it, the community that you have, and of course, the fact that, aminin na natin, nakakapogi talaga yung mga classic cars. We're gonna talk about all of that later on. And we're gonna talk about the world of classic cars, global enthusiast communities, and how passion projects can bridge cultures and lifestyles and lifetimes. So don't go away, we'll be right back. You're so tuned in to BNC, the Billionaire News Channel, and Mellow 947 BFM.
Looking for the perfect escape? Discover Club Nalu, a serene beachfront retreat where stillness meets style. Nestled along the quiet shores of Bacnotan in La Union, Club Nalu is designed for slow mornings, ocean breezes, and moments that help you unwind. From cozy rooms and sun-drenched villas to relaxing spaces inspired by nature. Every corner invites you to pause, breathe, and recharge. Club Nalu, come as you are and leave feeling a little lighter. Book now at clubnalu.ph.
Welcome back. You're still watching Shift Happens. We're still with lifelong restorer and founder of Lumang Oto, Doc Ericson Salmo. You're still watching BNC, the Billionaire News Channel, and listening to Mellow 947 BFM. I'm Paolo del Rosario. And of course, we have a lot more to talk about. Doc, nakakapogi talaga yung mga classic cars, no? It feels like it has a different look, a different feel. It's always an eye-turner. In your experience so far, which makes are the ones that really draw a lot of conversation? Because I assume in the States, there's always a muscle car. But there are so many different models and makes that talagang di mo mapipigilan eh. Pag-uusapan talaga.
Yeah. I think in my experience, the ones that catches a lot of attention are the unusual cars. Because, I could drive a Mustang and bring it to a Cars and Coffee, and, it could be detailedly restored, and then you get there and then there are 10 other Mustangs in there, right? Or okay. I guess in the Philippines probably it would be the box type. There's a lot of people that owns it. In as much as I love those cars, right? There's a lot of this kind of cars, right? So I think what makes a car unique are those cars that nobody cared for when they were new, and then later on somebody kept it in pristine condition. I used to have a 1979 Datsun 310. Nobody heard of that car. People knows the Datsun 510. People knows the Datsun 240Zs, right? But the Datsun 310, nobody knows what kind of car is that. It was a pedestrian car back in the day.
Yeah.
But then I got this car with only 3,000 miles on it, previously owned by an older lady, and never used the car. So it was in a pristine condition, right? And that's always a conversation starter whenever I drive the car, whenever I bring it to, I fill it up at gas stations, and I get a lot of thumbs up. And one time I brought it over to Japanese Classic Car Show, not expecting that it will win any award. And then it won third place for best 70s Datsun. I was teasing my other friends that spent thousands of dollars on their cars, for them to win a trophy. I said, I just cleaned the car and bought a $10 car wax and waxed the car and it won an award. I guess the uniqueness of a car right now is what matters, especially if, all of a sudden, it used to be a common car, and now nobody drives those kind of car anymore. And then somebody would see it. Hey, I used to own that kind of car. I couldn't believe somebody actually kept it pristine, right? So yeah, those kind of things.
It just reminds me, or at least it tells me here, that sometimes, as much as it is an expensive hobby, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it is very expensive. There are ways to get into it in a cheaper way if you know where to look and who to talk to. Is that the right way of characterizing it?
Oh, yes, definitely. Especially us Filipinos, we love to bargain. We love to get good deals, right? And that's also the importance of networking. Sometimes we develop, good friends, lifelong friends within the community. Sometimes we get parts for free.
Yeah.
If you develop that closeness of a friend, that later on when you need parts, they would just give it to you for free.
Yeah.
And I love that part of the community, the network, the camaraderie within the community.
Doc, are there pieces or are there projects that you have had, or at least your community has had, that talagang it took a while to restore? but it turned out to be one of the projects you're most proud of as a group or even yourself individually?
I think marami eh. One of my favorite cars, among the favorite cars that we sort of like restored was, I don't know if you are familiar with Joel Tan. He's a good friend of mine, very big into the car community here in the US. You know, his cars are SEMA cars. He's a Filipino as well. He was the one who brought the owner type Jeep here in the Philippines, introduced that to the American hot rod community. So, it became kind of big here in the States as well, the owner type Jeep. They never knew that type of vehicle exists. And so the thing that I remember most is that one time Joel was trying to restore a Hakusuka Nissan Skyline, and it was crunch time because he wanted to enter that car into SEMA, and I think we never expected that car to be completed on time, right? And there's a lot of us, the whole community actually was doing bayanihan, so to speak, in restoring the car, helping him out to finish the project, and it was completed just in time for SEMA, right? So those kind of experiences, masarap yung ganung pakiramdam, na nakompleto niyo yung project when you never expected that it will be completed at all.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Sorry, we're looking at some of the videos that were sent in as well. And obviously, we're seeing some of the newer vehicles alongside some of the older ones. But some of them look very, very... they look older than both of us combined, sir, just to put it together. When we take a look at some of the vehicles that are there or that you've worked on or have had the pleasure of getting to know the owners of, what are the oldest vehicles that you've seen restored and reused and given a new life?
I think the oldest car, as far as people that I know own, is a 1939 Ford. It's owned by one of my close friends, Chris Perez. That is a, nut and bolt restoration car.
Wow.
Right? It's a Concord type of restoration, and he's owned the car for a few years now, and he still owns it today.
That's incredible. How would you describe the people who are actually part of this community? How would you describe classic car enthusiasts for those who are not too familiar with the general character of someone who is willing to invest and their time, their effort, and even their funds on classic cars?
I think in general, I may have said it earlier that most of the people that are involved in the old car hobby are people that are very down to earth. That's what I love about the hobby. There's no ego, right?
Yeah.
You can feel that, hey, I have more money than you, therefore I have a better car than you do. Walang ganon, right? So it's just something that is so fun to be with, especially right now that we live in a very polarized world. We talk about politics here in the US and even in the Philippines. Everything is just so polarized, right? And then all of a sudden you talk about cars, which makes it a common denominator for a lot of people that are interested on it, right? So many times I would go on a Saturday morning to Cars and Coffee. We don't talk about what's going on in the world. We just talk about cars. We just hang out with owners of these cars who later on became my lifelong friends. It goes beyond the cars now. Now the cars the owners that I met along the way became lifelong friends.
Doc, what about the new generation who are getting more and more curious about all of these old vehicles, all these classic cars? I use the word old as if it's derogatory, but really not. It's really classic.
No.
But what about the new generation? Have you seen an influx maybe, or is there a small pocket of the group who are actually of a younger generation na hindi nila naabutan but have started to appreciate the the technology, the machinery, the feel of actually being on or in rather a classic vehicle?
Yeah, I think when it comes to old cars, it kind of transcends a lot of different demographics, right? Even the age. Because they were saying that the old car hobby is just for older cars, right? For those people that have experienced driving those cars when they were younger. I kind of disagree with that because whenever I would go to car events, whenever I would go to Cars and Coffee, there are a bunch of younger people that are actually driving these old cars that are far older than them. You know, people that are Gen X people that, you know, driving old JDM cars from the 70s, right? So I would encourage the younger people to be involved in the old car culture, right? Because the thing is that makes the hobby alive.
Yeah.
Because if we will not encourage them, just like any other hobby, it could die. You know, when the older folks who are into those kind of cars would pass away later on because we're getting older, who's going to replace those people that are passing away, right? Those are the younger ones. And hopefully more and more younger people would be involved in the old car culture.
Doc, before I let you go, because we're running out of time, unfortunately, some people are wondering, how old does a car have to be considered classic or old? Kasi, is the 90s old? Nasa classic na ba tayo kapag 90s? Or maybe early 2000s? What is a classic vehicle nowadays? Ano yung baseline po natin?
Wow. That's a good question because, again, nostalgia is very relative, right?
Yeah.
Kasi dito sa California, we have a cutoff, which is 1975. The reason for 1975 is 1975 and older cars are smog exempt, right? So you could do whatever you want to do when it comes to the smog law. You know, you don't have to smog it anytime, right? So in California, it gets stuck to 1975 and older. In other states, I think it's 1980. It really depends, you know. For me, if you would ask me, I think it would be 1989. That's my cutoff for Lumang Oto. But then again, that is still very much subject for, you know, interpretation because if you were born in the 2000s and you see a 90s car, that's a car older than you. Right. So I think it's rolling right now. It's not, I would say it's rolling 25 years, they say.
Okay.
Right. But for me, I'm more of a conservative old car guy. So I got stuck in 1975.
All
but
right.
I love 80s cars. So don't get me wrong. I love 80s cars. I love the Radwood era cars, 90s. Right. And there's a big market for that right now. And, you know, it's actually kind of transitioning towards newer cars. It used to be muscle cars back in the day. Now I think the market is going towards JDM because of the influence of, I guess, Fast and the Furious.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and people like Larry Chen, those kind of people that are so good in, you know, promoting the hobby and encouraging younger people to be involved in the old car culture. So the old itself, you know, becomes relative right now. What is really old? Well, it depends on how old you are and how you look at it, right?
Yes, Doc, absolutely. But Doc, can I just say, hobbies like these, I'm sure they keep us all young. More power to you and Lumang Oto. Doc, for those who want to be part of the community, go check out Lumang Oto over on Facebook. Again, they are an international community based mainly in LA, but 90%, I believe, as you mentioned, are Filipino in terms of yung followers ninyo. So more luck and more power to you. Doc, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Doc Ericson Salmo, the founder of Lumang Oto, also a physician and medical director. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc. That concludes our roundup of the stories driving the industry forward. Ako po si Paolo del Rosario. Join us again tomorrow on Shift Happens, your fast-track guide to everything on the move. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionaire News Channel, and Mellow 947 BFM.